But I wonder the extent to which the story of what we chose to do with the Avro arrow, I wonder how much of that is imprinted on a generation of Canadians.
Welcome to the Enterprise Intelligence Podcast with CEO of Shiny Docs, Jason Cassidy, and VP of Customer Success, Davey Slimman. Gentlemen, how are you doing this week?
Doing really well, Steve. How are yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm doing good. I think beautiful weather. Going to get out and cut the grass for the first time tonight. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Doing great here too. Very excited about warmer weather as well. It's not quite there, but we're getting there. Yeah.
Good. So this week I thought I'd lead off with something that's very timely in the news, certainly across North America, definitely in Canada where we're living right now. It's budget season for governments. I certainly don't expect in the United States anything overly dramatic to happen right now with the election coming in November. But in Canada, it's ambiguous when the next election is. So there's all sorts of controversy around the scrutiny of capital gains tax and the productivity of the average Canadian versus other G20 countries and what they call developed nations. That's becoming more and more ambiguous as time moves on, because I've been around the world and everywhere is pretty developed as far as I can tell. But anyway, it's short story long is everywhere there is this productivity crisis or concern, there is this concern about labor being lazy versus labor being underpaid and all this. But I think underlying all of this, to me, is this whole idea of, is everybody rewarded for innovating? Is everybody rewarded for looking at what they do every day and saying, I need to figure out how we automate this. I need to figure out how we can do the thing that myself and the 70 other people that work in my department do higher, faster, cheaper, stronger, so that we could work on higher value problems, so that we can ship 50 units a day instead of 10. And universally, I don't believe that that's a thing.
No.
And in Canada, I think it's less of a thing than the United States. I think in the United States, people are far more competitive and more incentivized. Whereas in Canada, it's the status quo seems pretty comfy. And it's kind of interesting to see that really come to the head in the new budget discussions and productivity discussions. I think it ties really closely to the innovations that we bring to the industry. So I'll put it to you, Davey Slimman. Is there a there there?
There is a there for sure. I don't even have to think about it. There is absolutely a there. And where I think the there is in Canada, particularly as it compares to the States, is our relationship with risk, like writ large risk, banking risk, investment risk, but even kind of human tolerance for risk. And, this feeds into what you were saying about the status quo. The status quo is very safe. We know this. This is how this works. And if we don't touch it, if we don't change it, we know that it'll continue to work. And, but changing something or innovating and doing something new, well, that might not go very well. That might be risky, right? So at the core of it now, whether or not we actually have something baked into our Canadian, DNA or the like, I can't particularly answer. But to me, I really feel as though both at a micro human level and at a macro economic level, we have a different relationship to risk than what you see certainly in the States. And I would argue in other countries in the world that have shown a greater flair for innovation. Maybe I'll just pause there and get your gut reaction to that.
There was some irony in, I was a guest speaker at IP Ontario's event last November, and it was fantastic. It's a lot of great people there representing government and industry. One of the things I found really intriguing is they had some of the innovators from Israel there talking, and some as well from I think Korea. South Korea was represented, and as well, I think it was Estonia.
Hmm.
And what was kind of interesting is when I heard Estonia, South Korea, and Israel talking, it was very much a focus on how do we buy local, how do we develop the local economy. Even Estonia, the representative was talking about like if anybody wants to buy anything technological in Estonia, they have to do it through an Estonian company,
Right.
meaning that they have to buy like their
Yep.
Microsoft M365 licenses through an Estonian company and that type of thing. And I look at that, uh, and I get it's protectionist, and everybody in Canada is afraid of the big United States rolling over and crushing us
Hmm.
or financially, whatever that might
Yeah.
mean. But it's everybody does it, especially the United States. So I don't know what we're afraid of. The idea of here there's Shiny Docks in Kitchener, great product used around the world. You should look at it. It's of course Microsoft out of Redmond, popular popular
Right.
company. You should look at them, and we should be looking at all over the place, and especially locally when it comes to innovation and how we proceed there. But in Canada, it doesn't seem like we have that culture at all.
No.
Our culture is just kind of, I'd rather not do anything, but if I have to, let me just look at the Gartner list and I'll kind of pick the top thing on the Gartner list because then, yeah, at least I did the thing that everybody else is doing. Uh, is that just
Yeah.
my
Well,
perception? Is
no,
that reality?
well, and I'm going to tie it to something, a topic that you and I both, I know privately and personally think about a lot, which is, rock music and popular music. You're a guitar player, I'm a guitar player, and we're both of a certain age. And, the thing that kind of it reminds me of is this whole idea that, a Canadian rock act really isn't recognized or appreciated until they've had success outside of Canada. And I feel like there's like a weird thing happening as well with innovative Canadian companies. It's like until a Canadian company of any type comes up with an innovation that is celebrated outside of Canada and specifically in the States, then nobody wants to give them the time of day. It's like, well, okay, you're just some little, little thing. But as soon as there's broader recognition from some kind of outward body, particular the United States, then it's like, oh yeah, we love these guys. They're the greatest band in the world. They're the greatest. This is the greatest movie. This is the greatest piece of software. So I think we also have whether that's a self-confidence issue or whatever it is. I know there's some people have written about this over the years and have said that it ties back to this sort of kind of, we have not historically in Canada been a very divided country from in terms of classes of people. And so this idea that nobody should ever be too big for their britches, nobody should ever be too high on the horse in Canada, because we all shovel snow and we all get our cars stuck in the snow, whether you're, wealthy or not wealthy, whether you're a successful company or not a successful company. I don't know whether that's a thing. I don't know if there's a there, but it kind of feels like maybe there's something to that, you know.
Yeah, like I mean, ultimately, I mean, I could dive into that, and I'll just kind of stand at the periphery of it and say there's definitely a cultural thing happening, and it's of course it's steeped in what I'll call a natural conservatism that we all have. The whole idea of expending energy is expensive.
Hmm.
So doing something as opposed to doing nothing always has risk associated with it.
Sure.
And it's built right into your DNA. It's built right into your brain. It's why, like the whole idea that if you go out and start running, the time that your brain tells you to stop running, you've only used up 40 or 50% of your energy or your capacity, but your brain's telling you to stop. And I feel like that same thing applies to everybody. And then do you have the cultural steps then to take it further than what is normal, comfortable, whatever? And I think there's something culturally, and I don't know whether it's that classism that you're talking about or other things, but there is something there both Canada, the United States, everywhere else, is that there's a default position towards not doing anything that is ingrained in this, the conservation of energy for survival purpose. And but the thresholds and the habits that you have about routinely exceeding that is what makes you competitive. And I just don't feel like that part is well known. People don't even think about that too much. It's like my ability to extend myself beyond the comfort zone is what's going to make you grow, and people forget that all the time.
Yeah, and 100%. And I also wonder, and you and I are maybe at a little bit of a disadvantage here because of all the time that we've spent in tech and in software. But I wonder too whether there's a narrative that is true that we've all somehow missed, which is that Canada is very good internationally at anything to do with taking things out of the ground. Trees, rocks, fish, more trees, other different kinds of rocks. I have to imagine when you're talking about mines, fisheries, forestry, I bet there's tons of innovation here in Canada. I bet we
Tar sand. Yep.
tar say like in other words,
Yep.
like we are very innovative so long as it's about taking something out of the ground or the water.
Yep.
And I'm saying this without any kind of political veneer over it. It's an absolute fact. We are good at extracting natural resources from the country of Canada. Um, so, are we innovative in those areas? I would say we probably really are. Canada remains one of the biggest countries in the world for mining. Our mines, Canadian companies mine all over the planet. So I think one of the things that we might get stuck on, and this is maybe our own prejudice of having spent a whole lifetime in software, is that we look at things like the financial services industry or the tech industry and software, or things like that, and we say, well, we're not a very innovative people, but we're not looking down the road at people that are extracting trees out of the ground at 5 million trees a second or something. Not sure.
It's deep down, I think you're right. Like you nailed it on the head. Is that it's the best way to be of influence is to look around the neighborhood that you live in, see what's important to people, and then be influential there. The whole idea of whole cloth coming up with a new way of doing business that doesn't involve the thing everybody in your community is doing, no matter how good it is, the zeitgeist, the people won't get it
Yep.
until you prove it somewhere else. So I think that makes sense. It's
Well,
we've got a incumbency issue.
yeah, and we are good at these things and have been for over a century in some cases. Whether certainly when we're talking about fisheries and forestry, we've been good at this for a very long time. And I'm going to tell a little bit of a story, and I'm going to have to mask parts of the story to protect the innocent or whatever.
Or guilt.
Well,
Yeah.
I was once involved in a conversation about expanding a business that I worked for in a particular geography in Canada. This was a part of the country that was looking to grow and diversify their economy in ways that would uh, be different from what they were most commonly known for. And it'll surprise absolutely nobody, certainly it won't surprise either of you guys, that what the region was willing to do, if you were going to bring jobs to a region that didn't involve taking things out of the ground like trees and rocks and fish, there were lots of opportunities out there for you, like tax breaks and tax credits, and we'll give you a deal on this piece of land. We'll give like all these things that they would be willing to do to help you invest and innovate in their region if you weren't bringing a job to that area that involved taking a tree out of the ground or something like that. And and it's crazy to think that that's not happening all over the world. Of course that's happening all over the world. Every region wants to bring jobs to their area, to bring great opportunities for the people that live there. I think that what has happened to Canada writ large across, it's a big place but from sea to sea, is that when other countries look at Canada and they look at, do I want to invest in Canada, they're not going, gee, I really hope I can find a great little software company to invest in Canada. They're thinking, well, I mean, forestry or mining or stuff like that, because that's isn't that what they're good at? So maybe that's a narrative that we have to continue to work hard to beat. Other you gave some great examples. I mean, Israel most specifically, and for a few years now, has really elevated its story in terms of software development, right? So anyway, it's a super interesting topic. I don't think I have answers at all, but I think you and I both have hunches about what this looks like.
Yeah, for sure. And just kind of self-serving. I mean, we're a software company. We've sold millions of dollars worth of software, and our customers generally very happy, and they learn a lot about themselves and what's possible from us. It's all of that is cool, and the but there is we're constantly reminded that it's a, well, so what? I mean, like my job is just to, it's take that metal out of the ground. My job is to, press this button and then the pellet comes out. And I don't mean to trivialize what people
No.
do, but I mean, just that's the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
That's what normal people do, is they have a job that they do their job and then they come home, and the idea of transforming your job is unusual. And for us, it's like we're standing there going, hey, well, we got all these great examples of people who have transformed their job and they're happier. It's weird to us that you don't obviously want to do that as the default position. Whereas deep down, I realize we're the weird ones.
Yeah, we might be the weird ones. It's you started off. We'd have to look at the transcript, but you started off with something that has been stuck in my brain since we started this conversation, which is: are people recognized and rewarded for having this mindset, for lack of a better word? I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but I think that's at the core of the problem. Is that no, they're not. They're the Canadian worker, whether you're uh, creating spreadsheets at one of the big five banks, or you're doing accounts payable in an oil and gas company, or you're counting fish sticks on a conveyor belt. There isn't in my view a culture here of recognizing and significantly rewarding people for their innovation. So then that leads to people coming in going, well, my job is to look after this spreadsheet, and every month I do a new version of the spreadsheet and I change the date on it, and every once in a while we update the spreadsheet because there's new tax codes that have to go in there. And so it's you're not encouraging a culture of people to push the envelope on anything, because they don't feel as though their innovation is going to reward them.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's because I thought about this topic actually over the last couple of days when Steve put it on our calendar,
Yeah,
and it's the first thing that popped into my head was when I believe it was Diefenbaker that killed the Avro
right.
Arrow. And of course, there's all sorts of controversy around whether or not, like McDonnell
Right.
Douglas and Boeing and others bought him out, and who
Right.
knows? I'm not a
We may
conspiracy
never know.
theorist. We may never know these types of things, but either way, it's the signal that Canadians got at that point wasn't that we're not going to have the best fighter plane in the world. I kind of don't care. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
but the principle to me is we had this innovative thing that was close to best of breed, and we decided just not to do it.
Yep.
Seemed kind of expensive when you can just buy it from somebody else. And it's just, if that is at the top level of Canadian thinking, like we're literally at the prime ministerial level of, I get that we're innovative there, but man, let's just buy it from somebody else. Then you just shot your growth potential in the face, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. The Avro Arrow. I like the Avro Arrow topic. Obviously, there are people that really this is a big thing for them, and it's a big part of what they study, and people know a lot more about it than I do. Um, but I wonder the extent to which the story of what we chose to do with the arrow, I wonder how much of that is imprinted on a generation of Canadians. Now, of course, there are all kinds of young Canadians that you say the arrow to them and they have no idea what you're talking about. But I'm sure that there's a generation of Canadians, certainly our parents and even people marginally older than us, that would have been aware of these things at the time, that it was a imprinted upon them as a, oh yeah, this isn't just this, we're just not good at this kind of thing, we're gonna,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, like it's, and I think what a modern equivalent, what would have happened, like certainly for our region, having Mr. Lazaridis and Mr. Bolsoli do a lot of the amazing stuff that they did to grow BlackBerry slash RIM from this little thing on like Phillip Street up to one of the world's greatest telecommunications
right,
companies in 10 years. Yeah, imagine if the Canadian government didn't help them. Imagine if they didn't, or they just went, yeah, whatever. We can just buy this from Microsoft or Apple. Why would we even bother doing
yeah,
this? And I mean, it pays to try to take it all the way and see how far that you can take something. And again, yeah, we wonder if culturally that is a Canadian thing. There's of course exceptions to it. Shopify is
Shopify,
killing it right
sure,
now,
right, hmm,
and yeah, I mean, and BlackBerry is still a good company,
yeah,
so I got lots of friends that still work there. So their momentum never really left, despite the fact that the handheld market got kind of crowded for them. But anyway, short story long is yeah, it seems to be more the exception than the rule as far as growing something fully in Canada.
yeah. And I've always been very interested in kind of, let's call them like micro economies. But what I mean by that is cities or regions. You know, you think of like Silicon Valley as an economy in the whole Bay Area, and up down in San Jose and Santa Clara, and obviously up to San Francisco. And then you think similarly of the Waterloo region, or even the broader GTA in Toronto, and different in Montreal for video gaming, and Vancouver for film, and all kinds of kind of specialties, where there are regions that kind of develop an identity for having a hotbed of talent and innovative thinking, and the things that you need to do to signal to, let's face it, young people, because I'm taking myself completely out of this, but what are the things that you need to signal to an innovative young person in university or college today that says you should stay here and start a company, you know and I think that's the mindset that certainly some universities have worked very hard. University of Waterloo is a great example. Have worked very hard to recognize that that's part of what needs to happen. That there's this incubating element that needs to exist, because also, unsurprisingly, it feeds on itself. For a time here in Ottawa with Nortel, we had something very similar where Nortel was this enormous company for telephony, and kind of what we now think of as the internet. And but of course, it fell apart in the way that other Canadian companies have fallen apart. But what fell apart out of it was thousands of other little companies and other little innovations, because enough people decided that other than the cold weather, Ottawa's a pretty great place to live, great place to start a family. Why don't we start a smaller company here that does, photon somethings, or, other kinds of telephony, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that the role of a government in all of this is actually to help with that kind of incubation. And that when I say government, I'm not talking just feds. I'm saying like each of the layers, right? So that right down to the municipal layer. Like, what are the things that you need to do to make it attractive for people to not only invest money in the place, but for human beings to invest their hearts and their, I want to live here kind of thing, right? So Yeah, this that whole topic is fascinating to me. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know that we reconciled anything, but just to kind of stick a pin based upon your last point when we talk about the governments, it's the one thing going back to Estonia and to Israel and Korea when we're talking about that. There was this protectionism element saying it's important to us to make sure that we can be a little wasteful or lossy taking risk doing this. We're okay with that.
yeah.
So, and it's something oddly enough that just doesn't come out of
No,
Canada necessarily. And until somehow we can get that into the culture, I think we'll still be continuing with this conversation, but not today because I've already monopolized
no,
half
this
of
was
our
like
time.
this was I man, I love this topic, and I think about aspects of it all the time about how can this be stronger and better than it is, and what are the things that we could do as a company, and what are the things that I can do as an individual to not only personally elevate the things that I'm doing and that we're doing as a company, but that colleagues of mine are doing, or people that I'm just kind of sort of connected to. I've been sort of keen for a long time on the idea of kind of rising tide floating all boats kind of thing. Is that if you figure out how to create a cultural improvement that you benefit from, it could be of benefit to lots of people around you, right? So, and anyway, you're right. I don't think we solved anything, but you asked if there's a there there. There is a there there.
Okay.
I just also want to
Yeah,
jump in.
100%, Steve.
We were
Yeah,
talking about Dave. You're making some good comments about with the Avro
yeah,
Arrow being ingrained into our culture, and I think we need more people talking about the Avro car.
yeah, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, when you talk about innovation, what country tried to make a wacky flying saucer
Right. We
car?
did.
Mhm.
That was
Yeah,
us.
yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And why not? Like, obviously, you need to have a market for your product. But and this is kind of a Neil deGrasse Tyson kind of thing. He talks about like when you decide you want to go to Mars or even to the moon, you end up inventing all sorts of things that end up being worth billions of dollars. Like think of everything that came out of the space
Yeah.
program. It's you wouldn't have Texas Instruments, you wouldn't have the same aerospace industry in the United States and around the world. There's tens of thousands of Canadians, and everybody else worked in that program to make this thing happen.
Mhm.
So it's incalculable the benefit, despite the fact that if you just look at the raw price tag, it's like, wow, we spent $20 billion to go to the moon. That was dumb. We just got some rocks. So I don't
Yeah.
know. It's Texas Instruments and McDonnell Douglas and Boeing and everybody else that participated would probably go, we kind of like it. So
Yeah.
anyway, it's you got to be a big picture thinker to get through
To
that.
say nothing of, as all the sort of ancillary things that need to be created to make lightweight spacecraft that can be rocketed into the stratosphere. All of the innovations around are the lightweight products that we have today. The I think was Velcro one of them. Velcro was, I think, if not was that a
Yeah,
space?
Velcro was
Vel-
well, certainly within the space
yeah,
program. It killed Gus Grisham.
yeah,
Uh, so they quickly realized that 100% oxygen plus Velcro on fire is really bad.
yeah.
But so anyway, it's sorry
Bad
to
example.
bring that that example. Yeah.
Well, but my
So
but my
yeah,
10-year-old kid wouldn't say that because he loves his Velcro sneakers, right? So yeah, hundred
totally. Yeah.
percent. Like the innovation, you don't even always get to decide what that's going to be. Like the thing that falls out of it is, and that's the great thing about exploration and testing and saying, throwing caution a little bit to the wind and saying we are going to take a risk and explore this new area of research. And one of the things that may fall out of it is something that's really useful for people, but that wasn't what we intended. Or
Hmm.
we ended up with something really interesting that wasn't the thing that we planned on. And getting to a corporate culture that's into that way of thinking is critically important for, I think, certainly for companies like ours, but culturally, like bigger than that. Like how do you get a city or a province or state or a country to have that mindset. I don't know the answer to that.
Willing to keep poking on
Yeah.
it. What do you got for us today,
Well,
David?
so it's kind of it's tied to it's actually tied, Steve, to the LinkedIn post that I made earlier today. But it all stemmed from two things happening right around the same time. The first thing that happened is I watched a video interview with Bono from U2. So we're tying it back to rock and roll, tying it back to music. And I had a really great conversation with a customer of ours that it was I'm going to connect these two things, and I want to just sort of riff on it for a second. If for people that don't know the band U2, they're a little outfit from Ireland. You may have heard a couple of their ditties. They were a very big band. They continue to be a very big band in the world. And for people who don't know this, there was certainly a time, I would say in the 90s and maybe 2000s, where U2 as a band started to take a lot of criticism. They were often Bono in particular was known for kind of pontificating and being very sort of, you should live your life this way, and these are the things you should boycott, and these are the things you should buy, and this is how you live your life, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people really didn't love the idea of a millionaire rock musician telling people kind of how they should live their lives. And they, I think quite rightly, took a fair bit of criticism for that. Certainly Bono himself took a lot of criticism for that. But what he was talking about was your reason for listening to a U2 song or a U2 record can be as varied as anything. Maybe it's the guitar playing you really like. Maybe you just want to smash your head against the wall because you like the drums. Maybe it's the lyrics. Maybe it's this, there's something really poetic in the lyrics that really grabs you. And this was just a short little video that I watched. And I thought, that was kind of neat of him to say and acknowledge that there are a lot of different reasons for enjoying a band. And Jason, your reason for enjoying a piece of music could be completely different from Steve's and completely different from mine, but it's all the same piece of music. So I'd seen that video and it was rattling around in my brain. And then I had this really great conversation with a customer who was kind of, we had done the stuff, Shiny Docs Pro had done its thing. They'd gone out and they'd found all their data. And then the woman that I was talking with said, well, I don't really know what I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't want to make a mistake now here. Now that I know where all of my files are, and I know which stuff is maybe privacy related data, and I know which stuff is duplicate data, I don't want to mess anything up, but what should I do? And it reminded me of a lot of the Bono video, which is like, there's not really a wrong answer at this point, because now that you have this data, now that you know all this stuff, almost anything you choose to do is going to be an improvement. Almost anything you choose to do about the data that presents a privacy risk is going to be an improvement. Almost anything that you choose to do with your duplicate data that's on the file share that should be in your iManage system is going to be a good decision. And so to me, it's like there are no wrong answers, just like there's no wrong answers for why do you like Where the Streets Have No Name versus why do I like that song, right? I don't know. And by the way, I think that was ultimately a comforting conversation, I think, for our customer, because what she was left with was this belief that the quality of her decision making has gone up exponentially because of the data that she now has. So there's no question here, is an observation, tying two things together. Thoughts about that, Jason or Steve?
I'm going to throw a dart at this with a topic that I think I've introduced before, because to me, this beat around essentialism again. Yep. Everybody mistakes essentialism for the idea that, I have these essential things and I'm only going to focus on this. They feel like, okay, only buying white furniture is essentialist, or not hanging something on your wall is essentialist, or something like that, which I guess is maybe some form of it, but it's not.
Right.
Essentialism starts with, do I know what all of my options are?
Right.
Okay. And if you don't, you are in no position to be choiceful.
Yep.
Okay. And that is, it's like if you read McEwen's book or it's any other guidance on essentialism, it's the whole idea is that I feel really good that I'm doing the thing that, either makes me happiest or is going to yield the best result or whatever.
Yep.
That's the whole idea of essentialism, because I'm not doing everything. I'm just doing the thing. And how do you decide what the thing is? You quickly identify what all of your choices are.
Right.
And you have a capacity to measure the difference between the different choices. You pick the one who comes out with the highest score, and then you execute on it, feeling good that you're doing the highest yield thing as far as you know.
As far as you know, with the data you got.
With the data that you got. So when I think of I haven't tied it back to why I like Where the Streets Have No Name yet, but just thinking to your customer is they didn't realize that they took the first step to their essentialism. And now the next step that they're going to take is going to be the priority one.
Yeah.
Based upon the information that they have.
Yeah.
And they don't realize the massive power that they just achieved. Because if they didn't do the work with you, they would have just guessed.
Yeah.
And they would have done something.
100% would have been a guess.
Yeah, totally guess. And maybe they guessed wrong, but they did the task right. And they felt great. Look at us.
Right.
We migrated everything from the file share to some other website. We did it. Checkbox. Yes. And then when you ask the users, okay, what did this do for you? They're like, well, I guess we got to go to the website now.
Yeah.
And
you've just made my job way harder.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's what people do is they just, in the absence of doing that first essentialism step of figuring out what my options are and then weighing what outcomes I'm trying to drive and then making a great choice, they just do something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's that's why so many people want to follow a gym program.
Yeah.
Rather than learning what it is that their body needs and then building that for your own body. Well, that is because that's hard. I mean, that's hard to do. People just want to, here's the ladder, climb the ladder.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because I should be clear. It's unfortunate. I didn't mean to certainly single anybody out because I would say the conversation that I had with this customer was actually pretty typical, right? Every one of our customers comes to us with I would say a loose objective. I feel like we're spending too much in the cloud. That's an example. We've got cloud overages, but I don't know what to do. Or I've got a security audit, or not a security. We've got a compliance audit coming up, and I'm concerned that we've got files on our file shares and people's hard drives that shouldn't be there. They should be in the system of record, for example. But I don't know what But I don't really know. But I don't actually even really know if that's true or not. Right. So there's a loose set of objectives that a lot of our customers come to us with, but that they really don't have any data to begin to make a good decision about. And so the difference, I mean, it's just laid bare too. It's all visual. It's so easy to see and understand. It's laid bare for them to say, well, this is actually what it looks like. You know what's kind of interesting? I can't remember, Jason, whether I told you this or not, but we also have been working recently with a customer who, when we first spoke with them almost 6 months ago now, I remember one of the very first things they said is, we've got a huge problem with duplicates. We've got copies of our files all over the place because because this is anecdotal, I've seen this one document in like 4 different places. So we've got to fix that. Do you know what our software told them? That's not true.
That they have 15% duplication or less.
Yeah, it's actually not. That actually, if anything, it showed that they actually have some great information management, policies in place, that they don't have a giant problem with duplication. Great. now you know that. Now you
Mhm.
can take that, take that up to your leadership, and you're saying, if you guys are saying we've got a big problem with compliance, we've got a big problem with people storing files that outside the system of record, I can show you that we actually really don't, or maybe we've got one area that we could focus on because it's not as good as the other areas. But not having that data, you're just guessing and you're just making things up. And so, this is what I mean when I say that once you've done that, almost any choice you make after that is going to be a better one. You could probably work at it and make a bad decision still, but the quality of what you choose to do is just going to be so much better with that data.
Yeah, and it's I love that. And the issue that we have as a software vendor is we have to straddle what I'm going to say both sides of the fence. And what I mean by that is, and I think Steve can attest to this because as with our marketing talks, we talk about this all the time. I always want to make sure that we have, from that essentialism point of view, we have exhaustively explained some of our use cases. So, for example, the thing that we're putting up tomorrow on the website, Steve done a beautiful design, and Davey, you and Duncan did a wonderful job with the copy. And we're talking about, moving your file shares to Azure Cloud.
Yep.
You get search on top of it, continuous analysis, it's storage optimization, it's fantastic. It's an awesome thing, but it's one specific use case. And when somebody buys a Shiny Docs Pro, you don't have to just do that.
No.
So what we tend to do as salespeople or marketers is like, man, I'm worried about losing people if I cast the net too small, just to people who want to do just this one use case.
Right.
However, you have to do both things.
Yeah.
So that customer that you're talking about, they thought they had the dedupe use case. I got to get rid of the duplicates.
Mm-hmm.
But then they found all this value in now seeing all of their data.
In search, yeah.
Yes, in search. We have to thoroughly and exhaustively explain the search use case too, so that when they come to the, man, I don't have a duplication, but now I know what my data is, what can I do? You need to have a targeted use case that can turn them on at that time. Yeah. So the fact that we can do a lot of things for a lot of people is definitely the top battle card.
Yep.
But I mean, we need that. It's like, here's the lots of things. This is what you unlock by being able to see exactly what documents you have across SharePoint file shares everywhere. Email everywhere.
Yeah.
However, once you've done that, now from an essentialism point of view, you get to choose from 1, 2, 3, or 4 different use cases that you can prioritize that come out of the back of it, end of it. Yeah. And us being sniper approach with the use cases does in no way detract from the broad appeal of the generic big problem solver that we have. But I'm going to suggest, in the absence of clearly articulating the use cases, it's terrifying for people because they'll be in that position of, I was wrong about my duplication problem. Now I'm scared of making the wrong decision. Back to your original customers.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Right. So you need to explore both. You need to really bring the use cases to a fine point, and you need to keep the broader appeal as the bigger net. Yeah. You can't do it without both.
Yeah. I think you're bang on. Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah. And what do you think, Steve? Because you've seen the evolution of this with Shiny Docs, us going from generic now to far more targeted.
Yeah, I mean, I think Davey, you and I were having a conversation just before we started recording about that it's like seeing kind of the focus of the product now into Shiny Docs Pro, even as an example of that, I think has been, made huge strides as far as, what we're looking at, like Davey, I think you said, like where we are today versus a year ago is, way more kind of like new business in the door by focusing on that kind of single specific element. I think that I think that same idea kind of carries through to what Jason's saying. I do think there is messaging is complicated, and I think we're working through that right now. And there's power behind, again, that highest level of value proposition of explaining to people as simply as possible the value we provide and how we provide it to them. But then beyond that, to Jason's point, getting into the nitty gritty and really kind of focusing on these specific use cases is extremely powerful, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and there are some that are if not universal, as near universal as you could imagine for enterprise level organizations, right? I mean, they're just so common as to be effectively universal.
Mm-hmm.
Duplication, cloud storage costs. There's people struggling to find documents during their business day. That one's like the one that literally everybody on the planet has in their workplace. You go home at night, you fire up Google, and you find instantly what it is you're looking for. But if your colleague at work asks you to find a 4-year-old Excel document, you might as well just go home, because it's like, well, like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm never like, you might as well just ask me to, drive to the moon,
Yeah.
because
And we fixed that, by the way, audience.
yeah,
It's like, I mean, exactly. That's the number one use
yeah,
case for
yeah,
me. And that's kind of the irony for us, is that it's not the reason why the organizations come to us. They come to us with that question. Oh, I think I got duplicates everywhere. Or, oh, I've been told that I need to do
yeah,
this compliance
yeah.
thing. And then when you ask them, well, why do you have this information at all? Oh, well, the engineering guys need it, or the finance people need it, or whatever. I'm like, well, what are you doing to get it to them when they need it?
Oh, that's a
Well, that's
nightmare.
not my problem.
Yeah,
That's not my
yeah,
problem.
that's
My problem is to secure it. I don't want to deal with that. I'm like, okay, let's say we do an entire program of getting the information to those people that need it. And I bet you there'll be enough money in that program for you to get this compliance goal licked and these other
yeah,
things.
yeah.
It's just this positioning shift is the most important thing in order to move the product that you want to move, whether it's in the market or internally within your organization. That's how you position it.
End user search of enterprise data is the killer. It's the
Yeah,
it's the superpower, and it's something that we make look easy. And but to
yeah,
be clear, it's not easy. There's a lot of work and effort that's gone into making this kick-ass product, but we make it easy for the end users because it's like Googling for, a video game or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. That's why I don't like our developers doing demos for customers, because they want to show them how hard it was to build it to make it easy for the customer. So it's
Yeah.
like, I want credit for all this
Well, they're
effort,
not here to
which
defend
I
themselves.
hope that we give to them. Yeah. So shout out to the R&D here at Shiny
Yeah,
Ducks.
yeah,
They work.
yeah. Our
But
search is unbelievable. It's so good. And the number of times
yeah,
we get a customer just say, somebody came and asked me for a file that was 8 years old, and it was a scanned PDF of a drawing or something, and I found it in 8 seconds or something. It's like, yeah, easy.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's the future right here. It's better than ChatGPT. It's better than blah blah blah, because instead of writing a limerick about your outcome, it actually finds the
yeah,
document in 8 seconds, so that you don't have to search
yeah,
for 8 hours
yeah.
manually. It's yeah, pretty
Super
powerful.
cool. This is a good,
All right,
good chat.
Davey, we ended up on a high note
Yeah.
today. This is good.
Steve, I'm sure it'll break all kinds of copyright and we'll have a cease and desist, but I'll be super disappointed if the outro music isn't Where the Streets Have No Name by U2. I think it pretty much has to be.
Yeah, get ready to be super disappointed because
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I will. I'll record something that sounds similar, but just not
Just
similar
different
enough
and
for
yeah,
a copy.
just
Yeah,
off. Yeah, just off.
love it.
no
It's
problem.
great to catch up, guys.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah.
Enterprise Intelligence is a Shiny Docs podcast with Jason Cassidy and Davey Slimmin, produced by Stephen Schuntz. Copyright 2024. If you would like to learn more about how Shiny Docs can make it easy to organize your content, protect your data, and make your users happy, visit shinydocs.com today.